Welcome to A Seat at the Table. I'm Melinda Brandt. Unfortunately, Ashley couldn't make it today, but we are still pulling up a chair with Loree Tamayo. Normally, I like to start with someone's background, how they got to this point, where they came from, what shaped them. But there was something you shared with us that I really want to start with, and that is you said, I didn't just overcome something, I rebuilt from it. And I think that says so much about your story and the work you're doing now. So before we get to yesterday's gone and defining tomorrow, I want to start there. What does that mean to you?
Well, sometimes terrible things happen to you and you get through them and you come out the other side stronger and your pain has a purpose. And you end up becoming a better person. For me, I didn't really understand emotions and dysfunctional thoughts and how to set boundaries and trust and all these things because I'm this professional woman that's just been stuffing it and going down the road. And it was 48 years of my life when I hit a terrible time in a marriage that was very abusive. And I came out the other side having to deal with stuff. And it was a treasure that was given to me. Now I know everybody's got stuff. I got stuff. You've got stuff. We've all got emotions. We've all got problems. We've all got things. And stuffing those things doesn't work. And dealing with it takes real courage. And then you become like a better leader, a better employee, a better friend, a better wife, a better spouse, a better, child. And I have people that work for me that have worked for me for many, many years because of that transformation. I don't know if I was that great of a leader beforehand, but I became a better leader after everything that happened to me.
So at what point did you decide, okay, I am learning this about myself, but I want to turn it into more than just improving myself. I want to turn it into helping others.
Yeah, the day that I sat down with my mother and father and said, I'm leaving this situation, my dad patted me on the leg and said, well, honey, you got plenty of money and no kids and your own business. You've got it easy. And I said, oh my, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. He goes, well, sweetie, if you had 3 kids and no job, what would you do? And at that time, I remember thinking, this is not fair. Just because I am blessed that I get to get out, but other people don't. And I really took it to heart, and I felt like God planted a seed in my heart that when you get on the other side of this, sweetie, you're going to do something about it. And he knew. He's like, my little redhead's going to tear up the place whenever she gets well. And I took that commission or that assignment very seriously, and I feel blessed to be able to, be that person in the world.
So was it something that gradually you built up, or was it you got to this point, you felt good, and then you hit the floor running?
Well, it took about, I left in 2015, and in 2020, I bought the property. And in 2021, I started developing the property, and then in 2024 we opened and took our first lady. The interesting thing is it's I think, God, in my opinion, and I'm a Christian, and so God allowed all these things to occur, and he got me into this fabulous healthcare business to where I made plenty of money to where I could spend my money to start this. And what was funny is when I started building the women's shelter, I was using the profits from my healthcare consulting business.
You mentioned your healthcare business.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. We'll go back to the background to
sure.
where it began. When you were little, what were your thoughts growing up? What were you going to do, and how did that lead you into starting the healthcare business?
Oh, well, I wasn't going to get into healthcare. I think I thought I was going to run a shopping mall or something. I wanted to be like manager of Dillard's or something.
But did you have an entrepreneurial spirit in you already when you were younger?
No, I don't believe so. I was very, very, when I was young, I was very shy, very, very fearful of people. I'd graduated with my first degree, had a marketing degree, but I was real attached to my mother, didn't want to leave Amarillo, Texas, and so I kept looking for a job, couldn't get very many marketing jobs in Amarillo, Texas, so I started a second degree, and I thought, I really don't like this, and I remember I was going to a friend's church, and I grew up Presbyterian, where you sit there, and everything, and she was going to like almost a Pentecostal type, and they went up to the front to pray, and I was so frustrated because it had been like 2 years since I had graduated with my marketing degree, and I was like, I want to do something. I want to have a purpose in life. And I remember I got up and went to the front, which is a big deal for a Presbyterian to go up front, and I kneeled and I started bawling and I said, God, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Just show me what is my purpose in this world. And I will tell you, from that day forward, 2 weeks later, I got an assistant administrator job at a nursing facility. Within another year, I was the head of a CCRC at 24 years old in Amarillo, Texas. Then after that, I ran hospitals. And then after that, I started my healthcare business. So I was very blessed by that, but I never would have ever thought I would ever.
That wasn't your path in your mind.
And working at a nursing home was like, no way, this is not going to be good. But it ended up being a love. Like, I still love nursing facilities and assisted livings and all that good stuff. So what we do in my healthcare business is I have several employees, about 10, and we go to all these little rural communities, and we help rural hospitals, we help assisted livings, nursing homes, and we do some stuff in the urban area, but the bulk of our business is in little bitty towns like Dalhart, Texas, where I worked for many years, and just little bitty towns all around there's a town every 30 minutes, by the way, in Texas. Just so you know, there's a town every 30 minutes. I've driven all over everywhere.
I was going to say, just my little neck of the woods where it's small town Texas. Yes, yeah. I happen to know that firsthand too. I want to come back to the healthcare business. I'm not done with that, but I wanted to touch, you said your mom put you in model. Did modeling help build your self-esteem, help build your self-confidence?
It had positives and negatives. It did help me get more confident because you're having to get up and walk on a runway in front of people and do things. It got me into exercising and, getting a little bit more physical, and fit, and that helped me as well to learn how to work hard. So yes, after the modeling and after getting into routine exercising, I was able to get up in front of people and not scared. I had a confidence that I didn't have before, and so I think that did help me navigate. And then once I got my marketing bachelor's degree, that helped me too. That there was a lot that I learned there, and I felt very confident in regards to how to do things and how to do things in business. And I think I wasn't scared anymore. Like I used to be really scared of people, scared of rejection.
I was going to say, were you scared of people? Were you scared of failure, rejection?
Rejection, and shame. I spent a lot of my life listening to people, and they'd tell me, your hair's too frizzy or whatever. And I remember when I was 12, I cut it all off within an inch because they were telling me my hair was too frizzy, and just anything that people would say. And I struggled with that for many years. I got better with not having as many problems with it, but it was a constant struggle that I think many women and people struggle with still. We all face rejection. We all have things we're ashamed of. And how you deal with it, I think, is what I learned after that journey, that it's going to happen.
Well, that brings a good question about social media now. With the rise of social media and how prevalent it is in everyday life, has that brought back any of that, or do you see it as something else that you can turn into a positive?
Well, I never used it before Yesterday's Gone, the women's shelter. I just didn't do it. And then I had to start using it for Yesterday's Gone, but then again, I'm not the person that does it, so I hired me a little 20-year-old that does it, and I would say, this is sort of what I want to post, and I'd look every once in a while, but I honestly try not to spend very much time on it because I do think you could get pulled in and drugged down a hole, and then it's just not real. And I think the stuff that's posted, which we try to do that's more authentic and real, people enjoy better. Our deal's not bad because we're helping people. So, of course, our social media presence and people that are involved, what are they going to do? Say something bad about us? That looked pretty bad on them,
right. Well, and you touched on being authentic. That has been a recurring theme with everyone that I have sat down with, especially in regards to social media. How have you found, besides with the social media, that has helped your businesses?
I've always been a really direct person. Some people don't like that, It's you either know if I'm happy or glad or sad or mad, My husband says, you're sort of like a skunk. Everybody knows how you're feeling, I think being real, and I've shared a lot of my own personal journey in some of the books that I've written and things of that nature, because I think if you don't talk about stuff and you don't put it out there, how are people going to know that they're not strange or weird or alone? I'm proud of the journey I went on, even though there was a lot of depression, anxiety, all these different things that people don't like to talk about, but they happen. being authentic with the ladies on the property, that's a big deal, and being authentic when you're doing business out there in the business world. I think the reason my healthcare business, LTCM, is so successful is I'm very trusted in the rural Texas environment because people know, I'll tell them, I think you're wasting your money on our consulting right now because either their staff's not on board or their staff's doing a good job and they don't really need us, and I'll say, let's negotiate this contract so that you're spending the money the best way you know how. And I get tickled because they sort of laugh. They're like, I can't believe you're saying that. And I'm like, well, I am not going to have a bad reputation because you're making a bad decision on your side of the street. I want to do you good and I want to look good in this collaboration.
So let's talk about how did you know, okay, it's time for me to launch into my own business. And how do you even go about setting up your own business, getting the clients? I'm guessing you had a little bit of connections through the work you had done previously. Talk us through the setting up a business.
Well, I was working at Christus Santa Rosa in San Antonio. I got a call from someone in Dalhart, Texas, that I had worked with. And he said, hey, there is a hospital district in Denver City, Texas, that's been petitioned to build a nursing home. Do you know anybody I can call that can help them do that? And I said, I can. And he said, well, I believe you can. Are you going to do that? And I said, yes, I will. Give them my name. I actually called like 2 people that had been consultants that I had used when I was in Dalhart as the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. And I said, hey, how much do you charge? And what do you have a contract I can look at that I can copy? I mean, I literally did it like that.
You started a business on the fly.
On the fly, because I wasn't scared of the operations of it. I just didn't have I need a contract.
The legal
I need
part?
to know how, because I had opened up an assisted living, a home health agency, a hospice agency, because when you work rural health care, you have to do it on your own. You don't have anybody helping you. So I was like, this is going to be easy. So that is when I knew I always wanted to be a consultant. When he called, I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. Now, I didn't quit my other job. I kept my other job, and I worked till like 2 a.m. every morning because I was like, I've got to make sure this is going to work. And I just consider it was just so divinely appointed because the architect for that nursing home had another nursing home in Cotulla, Texas, and he said, I think they need your help too. And I got that second client. And once I got the second client, I was like, okay, I got to quit this other job. And then it just grew organically. I was doing it by myself. I got my husband at the time. He had done his own medical practice. So I got some of his paperwork and got it done. And he told me, here's what you do. And file with the Secretary of State. So I did all that. And it wasn't like it didn't intimidate me because I'd already done so much like licensure paperwork and things in the background that I'd already had in my past that I thought, well, this is just more paperwork. And so I started all that up, got a bank account started, got my EIN number, and just hit the ground running, It was honestly not well thought out, which is sort of, I didn't have a business plan, which, I sit here and I'm like, oh, this sounds awful that I would do this, didn't have a business plan. Like I did business plans, and I did feasibility studies and I helped open businesses, but no, nothing was, I just knew I wanted to do it. And I thought, well, I'm going to take a chance. And honestly, the only cost was my labor and my ability to, okay, can I make enough? And I can always go get another job is what I thought. And it organically grew to where I added somebody part-time. That person's still with me today. Added another, made her full-time when we grew, and then added another part-timer, made her full-time. Those 2 ladies have been with me since 2009, have never left my side, and actually are wonderful friends and colleagues and everything. And we just continue to grow.
So what challenges did you come up against? Even people with the best plan encounter challenges along the way. So what challenges did you encounter that maybe you were surprised and didn't even think about it until it was right there in front of you?
I think the first challenge was I was doing this consulting, and one of the nursing homes said, well, we want a management company to run this thing. And I had not intended to manage anything. I was just, arm's length, not get too messy. And I kept running into people wanting people to manage their healthcare facilities. So I had to figure out, I've got to learn how to do that. Now, what does that mean? I don't want to employ the employees. I want to keep that on their side of the street so they have maximum flexibility. So I literally had to come up with that method because it kept getting asked for. The other piece that I found is, getting in front of a market. I had to find a niche market because corporate people weren't going to hire me. Brookdale is not going to hire me. They've got people that can do what I'm doing. But the small entrepreneur or the small town hospital districts that are not part of a corporate chain, they need me. So I found that niche of rural healthcare, and I said, well, where's an association that I can do a conference at? Where is, how can I get my name out there? Who do I know from my past that I can say, hey, I'm doing this now. Do you know anybody you can introduce me to? And then the thing I kept finding is once you sort of offer a service like nursing home consulting or assisted living consulting, you've always got to come up with a new twist, something new to offer.
Set you aside or set you apart from
Well,
others?
it's just sort of like a new service line. I've always had to create new service lines. For example, I can do your nursing home assessments remotely. That'll help you and help me, and I have a new business line. Or, I'm noticing that my clients are needing help with case management. Well, I need to create that for them and create that service line and, come up with how am I going to offer this service to them and who do I need to hire to do it? And then we just offer that service line. So that is a big thing, is watching what your market needs and then not being scared to say, I can do that. And literally, I've probably created 5 or 6 different service lines underneath just the healthcare business just to try to meet needs that I kept running into as I was helping with one thing or another. So,
being in the rural areas, does that mean that all of your, I'm going to call them clients or the people that you serve, are they facing the same needs, or is it specific to each location? When you're saying creating these service lines, is that something that goes across all of them, or is going to be specific to maybe one or two?
No. Most of them, it's a pervasive service line. There's, especially for patient navigation, case management, and then, there are some of the rural areas that don't have, like the hospital districts don't have nursing homes or all that. So if you do help with that, that's a targeted market. But the case management, we probably helped over 50 hospitals with case management, and it's a struggle. Some of the things that they're needing help with, having audits done, just so they can get a different set of eyes on things. That is helpful, to hospital districts and long-term care facilities out there, because the expertise, you've got one person, a CEO and a CFO and a CNO trying to run everything, and they've got a clinic, they've got a nursing home, they've got their hospital, their ER. It's a lot. And so being that person that can help fill the gap and help them so that they can do their jobs well, that's sort of what we want to do and try to do. But they face very similar challenges is what I've noticed. They definitely do.
So in your business, are you keeping them, are you keeping the same people in just year after year, or is there constant getting new hospitals?
Yeah.
Because you've finished helping as much as you can help with this one.
You do have to look at that. There are clients that are with you for years, and then there are clients that might be on a year or two contract, and then they're good. Some contracts are 6 months, and we define that up front, and we know we're going to be moving out, we're going to train their staff, and they're going to take over the program. Some are people that are like, we want to do it for a couple of years, and some are like, we're never getting rid of you. You're going to be here forever. So we have some clients that have been with us for 10, 12 years, and some clients that have been with us a couple of years. So it just sort of depends on their needs. I would say about every 2 years, we're turning over a lot of our clients, probably 60 to 70%.
So let's shift now to a nonprofit.
Yeah.
Just want to talk about the basics here. How is a nonprofit getting one started and running one different than starting and running a business?
It's very similar, and thank goodness for the healthcare background, because I took everything from healthcare and translated it over to this women's shelter. And I guess what I would say is I did use an attorney this time, because I was like, okay, I need to form this entity, and then I need you to get me a 501c3. And so the policies, procedures, operations of the women's shelter is very similar to operating an assisted living or, with a varying service line, but it still is very similar. So the admission agreement I took from the assisted living world and changed it over. The handbook I took from the assisted living world and changed it over, because you're going to be talking about, you're moving in as a guest. So a lot of the same things translated from healthcare, which is a very well regulated system, which makes you feel like, okay, this is good to cut and paste.
Right.
It can't be the same, but a lot of the essentials are the same. Development of the land. Now that was a different story. That was not in my wheelhouse.
So did you have to do that in alignment with meeting a nonprofit or just meeting your needs?
Yes, not to be a nonprofit, that wasn't required, but just because of Yesterday's Gone being, I guess the vision I had was I wanted them to be in a nice area that they had their own tiny home or their own trailer or their own place to live, because you don't want to have to cohabitate during the worst time of your life with your kids and your pets. That makes just life even worse. So they get their own little house on 7 acres. And making sure, I bought this property and, the grass was up to my neck. I had to get it cleared. I had to get fencing. I had to get security cameras. I had to get roads. I had to get electricity, septics, water wells, all this. So the same architect that got me in for my second client, Paul Rylander, he helped me for free.
Oh, that's awesome.
I said, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to get electric and septics. And so his staff helped me from 2020 to 2024 with the whole project for free. And it's just sort of cool. I when I talk about this, I just see, in my belief system, I just see God's fingerprints this whole way. Isn't it? It's just, it just is funny how it's just so intermingled. And it's like, well, of course he had it planned out, but, for me, I'm like, wow, how did he think of that?
Yeah.
So he helped me. And then, of course, we worked with the county, and, that's a process. And so that part was hard. And I think I was a little naive that was going to be a lot easier than it was. Doing the operations, policies, procedures, coming up with the programming, going and meeting with other nonprofits like Texas Baptist Children's Home and Annunciation Maternity Home and getting, guidance from them on some things helped us too. But overall, it was like starting a business. It seemed like something I had done before. I'd opened a nursing home before. I've opened tons of assisted living. So I just had like this project management thing that I did for all my assisted livings I've opened throughout the state of Texas. I'm like, we're going to do it the same way. And it has to plug and play to a certain degree. And then what doesn't, we're going to go ask for help. I'm going to go ask other people out there for help. And they were so nice. All the nonprofits, they're like, yes, how can we help you? What can we give you? How do we do this? How have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And that was sort of cool because that's not how it is in the corporate world, that nobody's giving you stuff.
Competition.
Yeah. Everybody's trying to help you in the nonprofit world. And it was interesting as we went around to other nonprofits. I'd go home every day and I'd think, there's so much good being done in this world. It's astonishing. And no one ever talks about it. I'd go to, Round Rock's little food bank. I'd go over to Hill Country Ministries' little food bank or thrift store, and I'm thinking, no one should ever go hungry because there's so many people giving out food and doing so many wonderful things, and then free counseling and free, everything that we went and looked at. Just so much good work out there in the world.
How long did it take you from the time that little seed was planted in your head that you wanted to do something like a Yesterday's Gone? Like maybe you didn't have a name for it, and the vision started coming together, and then actually being able to open your doors to help that first woman?
Yeah, so in 2015, that's when that seed got planted, and I didn't buy the property till 2020. And I was actually on an assignment helping a hospital and was living in that small town. And it was a hospital that was about to go bankrupt. And so I was living there for a year or two. And I decided when I moved back to Austin, I'm going to buy the property. And then I started dreaming about it probably 2019, 2020. Went and found the property. I knew it had to be, no deed restrictions, not zoned. I knew because there's just so much politics around where these things can be located. And I didn't even know the name. I remember I was listening to back then, my iPod, and I heard that song, "Don't Stop Thinking About Tomorrow" from Fleetwood Mac, and I kept hearing "Yesterday's Gone" in there because it's "Don't stop thinking about tomorrow, don't stop, it'll soon be here, it'll be here, better than before, yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone." And that's how the name came up, is from that Fleetwood Mac song. And I was just listening, I'm like, that's it, because I was also remembering like how a lot of stuff was gone from me, that I had shed and gotten rid of, and that even though healing's a constant process and you're never fully out of it and you're never 100% well, I was seeing a difference in things.
Each new day.
Every day was new, and every day I was noticing I was getting better and all those kind of things. So it was pretty cool.
So how do you go about, as you mentioned, not a lot of people talk about the nonprofits or even know they're there.
Yeah.
So how do you go about getting your name out so the people that you're wanting to help know that they can come to you for help?
Well, of course, we went around to other nonprofits that did food pantries, thrift stores, counselors that are out in the area, of course, they're helping people. Other nonprofits that are out there trying to provide the help. You've got 211 with the United Way, that's like a helpline. There's a couple of other places where you can put in your information. You go to the police departments, the sheriff's offices. You let people know, like with victim services, we're here and this is what we do. You go to, there's actually nonprofit meetings where a bunch of nonprofits get together and talk about their services so that they can better coordinate. And so you do those things. Then you do some social media. We join a lot of moms groups just because we're helping abused women or traumatized women. It's not just abuse, it could be just trauma, as well. Like we had one lady that her husband killed himself, and she didn't have a job. And so her whole life was upended. And so we've helped people that weren't abused. She had a nice, wonderful husband, but life changed, for her drastically, quickly. And so we help people like that too. So we put things out there. We make sure everybody knows our criteria, knows what we do. And we probably, I know last year in 2025, we fielded calls for 305 women. And what was interesting is when we started getting the word out there, I was getting phone calls on my personal phone because we hadn't totally set up private phones. I hadn't really thought about that at that point. And I remember picking up the phone and I was like, I can't tell people, I'm sorry, we're full, and hang up the phone. I can't do that. I'm going to throw up if I do that. So I got with my staff. I had one other staff member and then my other marketing person, 2 people. That was it, and me. And I said, we've got to, I know we're not a 24/7 hotline, but we've got to provide some services. We've got all these lists. We know all the resources. When they call, we've got to come up with a way to put them on our wait list and give them help. We've got all the Texas shelters all throughout the state of Texas. We can give them that list. We've got all the food pantries. We've got all the support groups in the area. We've got all this stuff. Let's make a template and let's get this ready for them. And then let's spend time talking on the phone. And as we started doing it, I'm realizing sometimes we're the only person this woman has ever told her story to. And they're bawling on the phone, freaking out. And I told my staff, I said, the first 10 to 15 minutes you're on the phone, do not say a word. Just say, tell me what's going on, and let the woman talk, because she might not have ever gotten to tell anybody any of this, and you might be the only person listening to her. That's a gift in and of itself. And then we usually pick 2 to 3 things we give them to do. Even though we send them a ton of resources, we we say, look, these are the top 3 things you need to do. And we help them find either a safe place to go or get free lawyers or put in a protective order or get in with a counselor, because there's a ton of free counselors out there. How do we help you? What do we, in our conversation, what needs to happen? 1, 2, 3. Because if you give them more than 1, 2, 3 with what they're going through, it's overwhelming to them. So we do resource management and case management every single day. And during spring and Christmas time, that's the worst. We get more calls than ever because something about those 2 times of the year are just, the uptake is crazy. We probably get at least 5 to 10 calls a week. Yeah.
That's so disheartening. Unfortunately, so many of us don't even realize.
Yeah.
You said when you first started over 300. That number was shocking to me, and I'm sure that's just a small fraction,
Yes.
especially when you look at a state as big as Texas.
1 in 3 women report it. 1 in 4 men report it. So when you look in this room and you think, if you have like a crowded room and you count off 1, 2, 3 and you have all the 3s stand up, it's shocking how prevalent it is. And those are the ones telling you what happened. So it definitely impacts, a lot of people. Most of the men that are impacted, it's usually from childhood that they have been impacted by it. And you talk about something horrible for a man to go through because they aren't able to do anything about it as a child, and it sticks with them. And for us, what I thought, oh, we're going to have a bunch of powerful women be our donors. Our biggest donor base? It's men.
Really?
Men are their biggest donor base, and men have been the biggest help. And I go back to that story of, wow, doesn't God write some beautiful endings to stories? So these women and myself were hurt by men, but look who's coming behind them to heal them and fix them and take care of them. It's a beautiful redemption story, and I see it every day, and it's shocking because men help us more than anybody.
Well, I am shocked by that, but it's also extremely awesome.
Isn't it?
That you can have that full circle.
It gives me goosebumps.
Yes.
When I think about it, and every time I say it, I'm just shocked. And then to see the love and compassion in most of these men that want to help, it just restores your faith in how men were supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we just ran into some yucky ones. That's all it is,
right.
And there's yucky women out there too,
yes.
So
just you speaking, saying that you advised your staff to just listen. I know you have said a couple of things. One about learning boundaries. Also, one of the biggest challenges has been learning how to carry responsibility without losing yourself in there. How do you learn to separate caring deeply and really, truly wanting to help and also carrying everything else, whether it's your own personal life, your businesses that are going on? How do you separate that?
It's interesting, and I probably could do a lot better job. I think it's still... Work-life balance is definitely a challenge for me because I'm a very achievement-oriented type person, so I have to always watch that. Having good people, that you've got to have. I have my healthcare business is ran by 2 people right now, and I just do a weekly call. So I'm not in the day-to-day anymore with that. My healthcare business still provides money, to Yesterday's Gone, and I'm still in charge of it, but I've got people. I knew with my personality I would not be a good life coach because on our property, the women that come, they get full-time life coaching, which is sort of like being a mom, helping you learn how to budget and get a job and do your resume and parent better and learn how to be a stronger, independent woman. That's what the life coach does. And then we have counselors that help with the mental health needs on the property. Well, I knew with my personality that would not be good. I'd probably not be a helpful person. So I knew when I first started Yesterday's Gone, I had to find a counterpart that could do that part. I can fundraise. I can do operations. I can set up insurance and payroll and all that stuff. But am I going to really be a good listener and a good personality type? Because I'm a high energy chick, I don't think they need that on board while they're dealing with their stuff, and I knew that, and thank goodness that's the first person I hired was a life coach. Before I ever even hired anybody else, I hired her, and her name was Yoko Ochoa, and she and I built this thing together, policies, procedures, built the programming. And I will tell you, I still believe to this day that life coach is the most important piece. Even though I love the counselors and they're helpful, that life coach, that is that person that says, I've got you. I'm here every day. If you want to come in and cry, come in and cry. If you want to yell at me, yell at me. I'm here. I'm your safe place. So the way we set up things, I guess, is that life coach manages their goals and their getting jobs and their support groups and everything. They manage their counseling, getting their counselor sessions set up, but they're pretty much like the house mom, sort of. And I'm the person that does all the business stuff. And also, if we have a problem with one of the ladies or an issue on the property, or if someone's just not meeting the requirements of being on the property, then I'm the one that has to do the, hey, you're not going to be able to live here if we don't get some things lined out, or hey, we're gonna have to give you a 30-day notice. I'm that person because I never want the life coach to be that
do that dual role for these
yeah, because
people.
she's got to be the safe one for them, and
right.
I've got to be. Unfortunately, if there is a bad guy, it's going to have to be me. So I've been very deliberate about you don't ever do that, because then how are you going to help them? They're going to be scared of you,
Mm-hmm.
And we have had 70% success rate, which is surprising because we only thought we'd have 30% success rate.
Why did you think only 30%?
It's hard to change. I think it's difficult for people to change how they're wired, and I just didn't know. Of course, I wanted 100%, but I was trying to just know, like, are these women going to be able to? Because what they have to do is work 30 hours a week, so they've got to secure a job and get a job.
Outside of the land or on the property?
No. They get their own jobs outside of the land, because our whole goal is when they move on the property, they are going to be there for a year, and they're going to have to be able to leave independently. And our goal is when they leave, they've got their own car, they've got their own apartment, they've got a job where they can make ends meet, and they're independent. They can live on their own. So what we do is when they move in, we get them on low-income and income-restricted housing list, because we're not sure where are we going to end up here.
Right.
And then we get them on state benefits, Medicaid, SNAP, all that. Our goal is to get them off that by the time we get them a good job. And then we start the process of, we spend probably 2/3 of our budget on rewiring. What got you here, and how are we going to make sure you don't get there again? Setting boundaries, knowing who you are, your identity, knowing how to spend money and budget money and have an emergency fund. All those kind of things, learning self-defense, learning car maintenance, learning house maintenance, all those things they have to learn. Learning how to use a computer and not get identity theft. We have classes. So
my goodness, I think we need to start this at like elementary age.
Well, we do. Learning how to set boundaries is huge, and that's the hardest thing that most of our women work on, is learning how to set boundaries. And what we finally did is we were realizing how compliant most of our ladies were and how people-pleasing they were. And the life coach and I noticed that they were saying yes to stuff that we were like later realizing that they really didn't want to do. And we were like, well, why are they telling us yes? So after each meeting, what we say to the ladies is, if they meet with a life coach, have you said yes to anything in this meeting you didn't want to say yes to? Because you can say no. So I want to know, have you said yes to anything? Sometimes they'll be like, well, yeah, I said yes to maybe going to that class that you wanted me to go to. Well, why did you say yes? Because I thought you'd be mad at me if I didn't say yes. Well, you know what? You can say no. Say no. You don't even have to tell me why. And then, have you said yes to anything outside of us this week that you shouldn't have said yes to? And believe me, we always have something every week. We're talking about, why did you say yes if you didn't want to do that?
But I think that's true for women in general.
Yeah.
A lot of us have a tendency to want to be people pleasers, especially in the corporate world, where maybe you're working around a lot of men and you don't want to say no for fear that they look differently or start treating you differently or don't think you're holding up your end of the bargain. How do we rewire a mind like that to say, no, step stepping up for yourself isn't a bad thing. Now,
Yeah.
you got to pick and choose, right? Of course.
Yeah. Pick your battles.
But stepping up and saying, no, this isn't for me. I don't think this is the best thing for me to do. How do you even go about?
Well, it's baby steps. You don't eat the whole elephant at one time. It's baby steps. And we have a curriculum that we provide for a self-help side, and then we have a curriculum workbook I've written for business side. Work-life balance, boundaries in the business world. There's templates for it. There's you have to decide first off, what is it that's going on that you need to set a boundary on? What is it? And usually the way you can identify that is if you're angry, resentful, or bitter, or feeling just yucky about something, that generally is a red flag that a boundary needs to be set. And then looking at what is it that's going on that's making you feel that way. And then basically setting that boundary with the consequence, but knowing that you're not going to get very good reactions to the boundaries that you're setting right at first, because remember, you're setting a boundary, stuff you used to let happen, you're not going to let happen anymore. So you're going to have some resistance, some anger, some persuasion trying to happen. You're going to have shame projections put on you. For example, you're selfish. You'll get told you're selfish or you're mean. And knowing that is that person projecting onto you because they're not wanting to take responsibility for putting their job responsibilities off on you. And they're telling you you're selfish, you're mean. Well, no, you need to take responsibility. That's your job responsibility. That's your child, let's say, that you're asking me to babysit. It's not my responsibility, and I'm not mean because I can't do it.
Right.
And then saying to yourself, I have the right to say no. And then say, I am a giving person. I'm not selfish, and reaffirm yourself. But also just having that template of, let's say Joe yells all the time. Your husband Joe yells all the time. And maybe he doesn't mean anything by it, but it bothers you. And so you tell Joe, when you yell, it makes me feel scared. I understand you might not mean it, but I don't like it. And Joe, when you start to yell, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go in the other room because I just don't like it. And when you stop yelling, I'll come back out. And Joe says, okay, gotcha. Joe keeps yelling. She goes in the other room. He's surprised, like, oh, wow, she really meant it. She's going to actually do it. She goes in the other room. He's still yelling. So she tells Joe, if you keep yelling while I'm in the other room, I'm going to leave the house. I'm going to go to the neighbors. I'm going to leave, and then do it, but take those little baby steps, because that other person you're setting a boundary on has to adjust as well. If you really, those expectations have got to be adjusted there.
Well, and I would think very well communicated as well, instead of just thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do, but not actually expressing it.
Well, you've got to explain it. They've got to know and explain why, to the other person. This is why, because Joe might just be somebody that's high strung and gets excitable or whatever, and he doesn't understand that it's freaking his wife out, that he's yelling about politics or something on the news,
Mm-hmm.
And so for her to express, I'm not saying you're a bad person, I'm just saying I don't like this, and so I'm going to go in the other room until you're finished or whatever. And then him to go, oh, okay, well, I don't really want you to go in the other room. Well, then you have a decision to make. You need to either stop yelling or I'm going in the other room. And that's where they'll get to some common ground. Because really all boundaries are is defining how we're in a relationship with each other. And we actually need them. If we don't have them, we don't know how to act around each other. Kids, need rules and boundaries, or else they flounder out there in the world. And really and truly, I think we all feel uncomfortable when we're not sure how to act with each other. And we're not sure, where is this person at? You sort of are testing all the time. And so I think most people appreciate boundaries that are normal, healthy people. People that are not normal and healthy don't always appreciate them,
They may not know that they need to appreciate them.
Yes, they have to learn. They've got their stuff, So, yes.
Well, and I would think, too, being a leader, whether it's leading a company, leading an organization, leading your household, setting those boundaries, but also, and you touched just a little bit on this earlier, that knowing your strengths and your weakness and making sure that you have the people to help you fill in the gaps.
Oh yeah, you've got to know it takes a team. It different personality types for sure. And if you had all my personality type, that wouldn't be good. It just wouldn't work. You've got to have detail-oriented people, big picture people. You've got to have people that are very much an influencing type, sweet personality people, to do things. It takes different personalities and different skill sets to make things work in the healthcare setting, in any setting. You have to appreciate those differences and know how you complement each other and know each other's strengths and weaknesses. I know it's funny with my life coach. I'm a big idea person, and I'm a very direct and energetic, So I'd come at her and I'd be like, "Hey, I've got this idea, and blah 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 blah, and I think we should do this, and blah blah blah." And she would sit there and stare at me. And I looked at her, and one day I said, "Why are you just sitting there?" And she goes, "Because you're an outward processor and I'm an inward processor." And I said, "Oh, okay. What do you need from me?" And she goes, "I need for you to give me a couple of hours to process." And I started laughing. I said, "Well, that's good to know. So I can just dump all this on you, leave,
come back later.
and come back later. Is that what you want me to do?" And she's like, "Yes, that would be good because you're a lot right now for my system." And I thought, oh my God, I wonder if I've been doing this to other people too, And so knowing, asking people, what do you need from me? Because I know not everybody works like me.
Mm-hmm.
And her being bold enough to say, hey, but I had to ask her, she's just staring at me, and I'm thinking, do you not have a response? And she's like, I've got to process what you just said. And then I can come back with a response, and appreciating that people are different and not getting mad about that and going, okay, well, great, I'll see you in a couple hours or call me,
Yeah.
And that's how we did stuff. And it was funny because we'd tell other people that joined our team, hey, we'd tell that story so that they would have permission to know, what do you need? Because sometimes I have no idea what you need. And I think I've told you everything you need to get the job done, but we might not.
We might have missed something that you're thinking about.
Yeah, and so when I hire somebody, I always say, I'm not sure how you work, so you've got to tell me how you work. If you need more details, you've got to ask me, because I don't want to micromanage you unless or I don't want to, hold your hand too much if that's going to be insulting to you. But I also want to give you what you need, and I need to understand if I'm lacking in instruction. So just know it's okay, and just know it's okay to ask questions, and just know it's okay to say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. And it's okay to disagree nicely and respectfully, because I don't know all the answers. And I usually tell people I'm real direct, so you're never going to have to guess. But please don't make me have to guess about you, because you need to tell me, or else I'll be just keep going and I won't know you're having issues. Well, then I learned not everybody wants to tell you. So you have to go ask questions. Management by walking around. Hey, how you doing? Are you feeling, how are you liking your job? Is everything going smooth? Do you need anything to do things better? Are you having any problems I need to know about? Because sometimes people won't tell you unless you ask some direct questions to them. They're just, some personality types are not going to do it. And I learned that the hard way running a hospital, and you'd lose people would quit. And if
Is it because, I'm asking you to guess here, because they don't want to look like they're complaining about something? So
I think it's insecurity, fear. People don't want to feel stupid, or they maybe are intimidated by their boss. They don't want to go to their boss, or they feel like they should know, or I don't want to gripe, that kind of thing. Sometimes they might have had another boss that said quit complaining to them, so they learned it from another bad experience, and they brought that bad experience into this situation, and then you realize, oh, you're bringing that from your past, and that's not the game here.
Yeah.
Just like the women on our property, people transfer their betrayals and their distrust and all their stuff
onto other people.
And it's a learned behavior. It's normal, but you have to say, hey, that's not the case here. Just because that happened over there at that job, or just because that person treated you this way, doesn't mean that it's the same here. So let's get some ground rules. It's okay to disagree with me. It's okay to tell me what you need. I feel uncomfortable when you don't ask questions, and saying some of those permission things to your employees or to someone you're trying to help, like a lady. It's okay. I know it didn't used to be okay
But it
with
is
that
now.
guy that used to beat you up, but it's okay for you to disagree with us on this property. Or I know it wasn't okay with that employer, but it's okay now with us. This is a different employer. We have a book that is about to come out. It's a workbook for businesses, and it's sort of where my past experience met the business world, and it's called Hidden Treasure: Unleashing Remarkable Teams. And the reason I wrote it was because I had all this stuff. I had all these emotions. I had all these dysfunctional thoughts. I had all these betrayals and things that had happened to me. And once I started like unearthing all that, I was like, golly, everybody else has this stuff too. I know they do. They might not know they have it, but that employee that screams at somebody, their coworker at the workplace, or the employee that gets in a fight with another employee or quits all of a sudden or has a substance abuse problem, those are all side effects of emotions and dysfunctional thoughts and stuff that's going on. And if we can help employers and employees understand we've all got stuff. It's not like that show on Apple, Severance, where you go into the workplace, you get wiped. Everything from your personal life is gone. All you know
Right.
is work. Then when you leave work, all your work stuff is wiped and you go home, That is not how the real world works. And I think some employers would like it to be that way.
Right.
But it's actually proven that if you don't process emotions and if you don't have good trust in the workplace and you don't have good work-life balance, you actually have lower productivity, lower profitability, lower innovation, more turnover, less retention. It actually makes your workplace worse. So when you think, well, leave that stuff at home, well, they can't leave that stuff at home. They're a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we are doing with our workbook, it's got videos, it's got homework, it's got education material, it's got resources. And I'll tell you a little story because it helps an employer not be a counselor, not get into illegal stuff like talking about
Asking personal
things.
questions.
Yeah, asking personal questions. It talks about, behaviors and making the employee or the leader, if the leader's having behaviors, making them ponder their behaviors. So here's just sort of a crux of the whole like book. Joe comes into Manuel's office and he says, I can't find a blankety blank screwdriver. And Manuel's like, what the heck? Joe's yelling at me and cussing too. And Manuel being emotionally intelligent, so Manuel's done the work. He's solid. He's like, Joe, sit down. Let me get you a glass of water. Calm down. This isn't like you. What is going on? And Joe's like, well, this place, it's driving me crazy. I never can find any tools. So Manuel pulls out the anger iceberg graphic and he says, okay, Joe, you're not an angry person. What's going on down here? There's all these fear, insecurity, frustration, all these different feelings that are listed below. And Joe looks at it for a second and he goes, well, we have these quotas and I can't find a screwdriver, so I can't meet the quotas, and then I'm going to get fired and lose my job, and then what am I going to do? And he's all wound up still. Mm-hmm. And Manuel says, okay, Joe, I get it. Thank you for telling me about this, because maybe this is why we're not meeting our quotas. Maybe this is why we're not as efficient and profitable as I think we should be. You've actually done me a favor today, so let's fix it together and with your coworkers. Let's fix this situation because it's going to help you and help us too. So Manuel gets everybody together and they come up with that labeling system and they label where the screwdrivers and the wrenches and everything's supposed to go. Joe's got some tentative trust being built back up, in his coworkers and in his boss. He's like, okay, I might be okay here. I might stick this out. I might forgive my coworkers and my boss for letting this be such a mess, but I'm going to watch. So on Manuel's responsibility, he's got to make sure everybody's following this new boundary or procedure, because basically procedures are just boundaries in the workplace. So Manuel's got to go out and check that every day and make sure he's making sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing and stuff's getting put up right. Well, one day Manuel sees that a screwdriver didn't get put up right, and he looks around and he figures out who it was that did it. He grabs the person, her name is Susie, and he says, Susie, come in my office. hey, what happened with not putting up the tools right? Susie says, well, Manuel, I can't reach the bin, but I don't want to tell anybody. I've been trying to throw it up there, but it must have fell on the floor, and I'm so embarrassed. And Manuel's like, okay, thank you for telling me. Let's fix this deal. So Susie is feeling trust-filled. Joe's watching the process and is like, oh, Manuel's fixing this. Everybody's working together as a team to fix the process. And so Susie and Joe are probably going to work there for the rest of their lives. You know, the team is filled with trust. Stuff is operating like it's supposed to be operating, and profitability and productivity goes up. You know, but it's all from something. This is just a stupid, simple story where it's so easy it's stupid, but we don't do it.
We don't listen.
What we usually do is just say, you're fired. So,
real quick, from yesterday's gone, you started defining tomorrow. Can you tell us what defining tomorrow is?
Yes. We started Defining Tomorrow and Hidden Treasure. And so Defining Tomorrow is the workbook, which I brought you. We have a workbook, and we have a book that we basically provide to anyone that needs it. If you want to buy it, you can buy it. If you are someone that can't afford it, then we will give it to you. But we also started remote support groups for women that have abuse or trauma. And they are 13 weeks. They are free. And we basically have a facilitator. They're remote, so they can do them from the comfort of their home, and they get the help they need. We also have turned it into a self-paced curriculum to where people can just do it on their own if they're just wanting to work on themselves, work through some shame, rejection, identity, boundary issues. It's not just for abused women, but the remote support groups are just for abused women because they need to create that community around them. The self-paced group is just 13 chapters of how to work on yourself to make yourself, a better person. And it's basically 8 years of counseling that I went through in a Cliff Notes version. It's got videos, it's got homework, it's got a little bit of content to help you understand how to process emotions, understand how shame works and how it can keep you imprisoned if you don't deal with what you're feeling ashamed about, how to set boundaries, how to think differently and know that the common dysfunctional thought processes and how to overcome them, all that kind of stuff, how to forgive, how to trust. That's what it is. It's a book with videos and a curriculum and homework, and then it's a self-paced group as well for just the general public. The remote support groups we do because those women need to create community, and it's mainly those abused women that we put in those. The self-paced group is something that can help people just that want to improve themselves, want to become a better version of themselves, want to deal with some of their stuff that they've got. And then Hidden Treasure is the business side of it, to help employers and employees in the workplace without getting too deep into the emotions or the counseling side of the street of it, just learn, like, here's what's happening in this workplace, and here's why this employee might be having a problem, or here's why we've got productivity issues. Look at the reason and the stuff behind it. Don't just expect people to change without knowing why are they not performing. There's generally a reason, versus telling them to get their stuff together and expect them to do better without helping them know. Because I can tell you, I went for 48 years and didn't know a single emotion except good or bad. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to even figure out how I was feeling. But once you know how you're feeling, you can figure out how to manage it better, and it sometimes is a messenger of a need. It sometimes lets you know what's going on if you can process an emotion. That right there is 100% was most helpful to me, to figure out how to process emotions I'm having versus trying to ignore them or numb them or do whatever. And I think in the workplace we do that a lot. We just
get through the day and
suck it up, buttercup.
New day will be a new.
Put on your big girl britches and go to work. I don't want to hear about it. And then that person quits you, or then that person isn't a productive employee. Someone that's working too much overtime. That right there is another example. You might as a boss think, oh, this is great because
they're getting it done.
But what is that costing you for customer service and patient safety in a hospital scenario? I've seen that many times in healthcare to where I actually, at one of my workplaces, put a stop to it and said, you guys can't work more than 4 shifts, 4 12s a week. I'm not allowing it. I had to hire contract nurses, but we were having so many patient errors and patient complaints because people were tired, and you end up losing people, even though they say they're wanting to work the overtime.
Right. It becomes too much eventually.
And looking at that, and then just knowing, trust is going to get broken. People aren't going to get along sometimes. They're going to mess up. People screw up. And so when trust gets broken in the workplace or in real life, like, what do you have to do to build that again? Usually something happens between, let's just use employees as an example. 2 employees have a problem. That trust is broken, and then what do you have to do to restore it? Well, you've got to set a boundary. You have to decide, we've got to talk about how are we going to be in this relationship so that I can then trust you. But we've got to redefine it because I don't like what just happened. So this can be personal or in the workplace. I don't like what just happened, so I don't want it to happen again. So here's our new policy, our new boundary, our new whatever, rule. Now, enforcing that boundary, where either you as a person, if it's in your personal life, or you as an employer enforces that boundary and makes sure that everybody stays in relationship, then maybe forgiveness can happen and trust can be rebuilt by that cycle happening. But if you don't redefine how we're in relationship together, because you've got to, once trust is broken, you've got to say, I didn't like that. I don't want that to happen again. How are we going to make sure it doesn't happen again? Make an agreement, make expectations. Once that's done, somebody's got to enforce it. If it's in the workplace, that's the manager's job. If it is at home, it's your job, and then enforcing it. And then once everybody is in agreement and harmoniously living, then trust is rebuilt. It's just a normal thing. If you don't have that piece where you enforce the consequences and make that change and enforce the consequences, then trust is just going to continue to degrade. And that's what happens in a lot of workplaces is the boss doesn't back up what they put in place. And the employees are running amok, or, there's 2 or 3 good employees and then everybody else is not doing what they're supposed to. They're not following the new boundary or the new policy, and then therefore you start losing people and you start having problems. That's why relationships end. Either someone's not saying what they need to the other party, and so therefore they grow apart. That's just going to happen. Or they're saying what they need and it's being disregarded, but they're not enforcing the consequences. Either way, that relationship's going south.
Right.
I think Brene Brown, she said it best. She has something in one of her books that she talked about. Her and her husband kept getting in fights over the weekend. And they're both psychologists or something, of some sort, mental health professionals. And finally they said, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? And the husband said to Brene Brown, hey, I just want to play golf, and I'm ended up taking care of our 5 kids. And I'm frustrated. And Brene says, well, I just wanted to go swimming, and I didn't get to do it because I was ended up having to do things. He's like, well, why didn't we just tell each other what we wanted to do so we could make it happen so that we wouldn't be dissatisfied with each other? We didn't tell each other our expectations and what we needed. So then every weekend, this is what she said, is they sit down, they say, what are you needing and what am I needing? They may not get all of it, but they come up with agreements. Everything's going fine now, And I think that we fail to do that.
We just assume people know
read our
what we
mind.
want. Yeah, exactly. So we like to end the interviews with a rapid fire question, like a this or that, and then maybe a 1-word answer or a couple of words if it needs more than that. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to start with this or that. Books or podcast?
Podcast.
Morning person or night owl?
Oh my gosh, I'm in the middle of the day. I guess night owl if I had to say it.
I'm going to guess on that I know the answer to this based on what we've talked about before. Planner or wing it?
Wing it. I'm a good winging it person.
Phone call or text message?
Phone call.
Okay, I know you've got lots of animals. You're going to have to pick just one. Dogs, goats, or cats?
Oh, cats. I can't believe I said that, but my favorite animal is my cat, Ruth.
One thing people are surprised to learn about you.
Golly. Surprised to learn about me. Probably that I have 3 goats, but I think that's it. I think that's what, I'm like Jaja Gabor out there, I remember when I went to go get those goats, the man looked at me and he was like, "You're going to get 3 goats?" I'm like, "Yeah. It can't be that hard, can it?" There's that wing it personality. I was like, "How do I get them in the truck?" And he goes, "Oh, okay."
You didn't bring a trailer?
So, yeah, I got the goats, but it was interesting.
Something you're really good at that has nothing to do with your work.
Golly. Really good at that has nothing. That's bad. Like, that tells me I've got work-life balance issues. Something I'm really good at. Man, my husband would say she's good at watching TV.
What about writing? You are the author, full-time author.
Yeah, but that's what it has to do with work.
Well, you're talking about work, but still writing's a whole process.
I'm not that good at writing. I'm good at speaking. I like speaking out loud, and getting stuff out there. I'm good at taking care and loving on my animals. I can tell you that. I'm really good at that.
That's important. That is important.
It is.
One thing women underestimate about themselves.
Their power.
Best advice you've ever received.
I am not responsible for anyone else's feelings.
One thing you're still learning.
Probably work-life balance and patience.
What does success mean to you today?
That there is a difference made in the world that will last after I die.
Finally, what does a seat at the table mean to you?
It means that I'm recognized for something good maybe I'm doing out there in the world.
Loree, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for spending time with me today. And thank you to everyone listening. If you would like to hear the full interview, be sure to follow A Seat at the Table on social media and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We share exclusive interviews and more from remarkable people who are building something meaningful. I'm Melinda Brandt. Thanks for pulling up a chair with us. We'll see you next time on A Seat at the Table.